Well, welcome to All Biz X, where I speak to industry leaders and topic matter experts about the pursuit of excellence. Now, in this series, we explore the secrets of building a culture of continuous improvement and unlocking your organization's ability to achieve operational excellence. Hello, I'm your host, Paul McCarthy, and today I'm joined by Brett Adamczyk. Now, Brett is the president of MOCA Systems Incorporated. That's MSI's software division provider of Touchplan, the most trusted software platform for collaborative construction planning. He has over 20 years of experience in SaaS businesses and is well known as a transformational leader who influences positive business outcomes and creates enterprise value for customers. Today, I'm speaking to Brett about Touchplan. So, welcome to the call, Brett.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Brett, perhaps just in your own words, you could give our audiences a quick overview of your career so far.
I don't think I could do it any better than you just did. Um, but I'll give it a try. I mean, I started my career in finance in investment banking, and then kind of moved into private equity on the buy side. So and it was really in that capacity that I learned how to start unlocking the value of companies, both through operational improvements as well as financial engineering. I spent a lot of time in private equity, kind of became a de facto SaaS TMT technology guru on that side of the house. And what I really learned in that capacity was that I love doing deals. I love the M&A. I would like to think that I'm still good at finance, but what really drew me to it was the chance to effectuate change inside the businesses operationally, and working with our executives, and learning about the businesses more so from the inside than the outside. And it was at that time that I kind of transitioned out of finance to becoming an operator. Started an advertising technology business, with a couple of other co-founders as one of the early employees, and we were off and running in the SaaS world. So I would like to think I've been a little bit of to your point, a kind of transformational leader. At the last few stops, I was running Newforma, another construction platform, in the industry for a few years, as a COO. And we had a really successful exit with that, and I transitioned into MOCA Systems.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted to talk to you about Touchplan, and I suspect some people won't be familiar with Touchplan. So, can you tell us a little bit about the Touchplan software?
Absolutely. So it actually has a long and winding history. So MOCA Systems and the basis for our software platform was actually founded by MIT, professor and students inside of MIT almost 20 years ago. And at that point, it was really more about an estimating solution, a cost estimating solution. And it actually was overly complex. And what we found was you really needed a team of service professionals that knew how to use it, to implement it, to go and do their job. And out of that, a consulting group grew within MOCA Systems, and the software was kind of sunset. And then the consulting group or services group recognized that there was a real need or challenge in planning and scheduling, amongst all their client base. And out of that, Touchplan was really born, about 8 years ago, to kind of handle the daily rigors of getting everyone on the same page and committing to a plan, and continuously being able to update that plan with a level of visibility and transparency and data integrity that would allow everyone to be accountable for what they had to do on the job site. So when you think of the trailer and digitizing the planning process, I mean, there's still a ton of people that you do your daily huddles, or you go into the construction trailer and there's a bunch of sticky notes all over the wall, and there's plans and all kinds of things. Touchplan really aimed to bring simplicity. I don't even want to say simplicity, because it's a complex process and it's a complex system in terms of the amount of information and users and things that it handles. But it really meant to digitize that process and give every constituent and stakeholder that needs to be a part of it a voice.
Well, it makes sense as we evolve that trying to take these complex processes and find ways to simplify them. And as you say, it doesn't become a simple process because it is a complex process. But how does the traditional planning method that you've sort of touched on with plans and sticky notes and so forth differ from the digital planning experience?
I mean, I would honestly say, what we've tried to do is make that process as similar as it can be through software and technology, right? So people don't necessarily have to change the way they're planning or how they plan or what they're planning, but it provides you with a system and access, and not having to retype things into spreadsheets and not having sticky notes falling off the wall and people moving them around without accountability. And you go up and you're doing your traditional planning process, whether it's people implementing the last planner system or doing a pull plan, or whatever it might be, even in a daily huddle, and making commitments. At the end of the day, if a sticky note fell off the wall and the job didn't get done, you might not know who was responsible for that, or where it was supposed to be on the wall. And I think it's really important. You're not losing that accountability of people standing up and doing commitments or anything, but really what you're doing is providing them a collaborative workspace with that data integrity, with all these bells and whistles and um, components, analytical components and data, right? That gets lost in translation when you were doing these tasks manually, or transcribing work from the board or your meetings, and trying to figure out where that sits or who's responsible in your planning activities or your scheduling activities. So I think it really, I mean, we've been an industry leader for the last 8 years. And I think, when you look at the impact software has had on the construction industry, I'd like to think, mostly for the better. I think we're in a little bit of a technological revolution as it relates to the software applications and the strides that we're finally seeing in the construction industry. I mean, I think the report has been out there for quite some time. I think it was a McKinsey report that the construction industry was the second biggest laggard in terms of adoption of technology of any industry out there. And I'd really like to think that there's been a lot of investment going into construction from a software perspective and improving processes. And really at the end of the day, that's what we're about, right? We want to provide you with the tools that are going to allow you to do your job better, make you more efficient, be able to deliver on time, right? Be collaborative. Because as you kind of know, I think you've interviewed, one of the principles of the last planner system is, it's the boots on the ground that are most responsible for what they have to commit to every day, right? And being able to align with those people in the trades and make sure that everyone's on the same page. That's how you get buy-in. That's how you get accountability. That's how you get a sense of pride and stuff getting done. And really, at the end of the day, that's partly really what Touchplan is delivering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like any good idea, that where the genesis starts from a recognizing there's a gap, a problem there. And you've touched on the fact that the industry itself has been a bit of a laggard in taking on technology. So if you're sitting with a construction company, and you're talking to them about Touchplan, what are you talking to them about in terms of why they need a platform like this?
I mean, I think it goes back to some of the things that we just touched on, but right at the end of the day, um, people need to want to improve. People need to want to get better. People need to want to understand, right, how my people can be better, how I can deliver a project better. And I think what we found in terms of the people that have really leaned in to using Touchplan is they're all about learning. They're all about improvement. There's a lot of tools out there right now. I think when you go in the field and you talk to supers, you talk to project managers, right? I mean, there's a barrage of people trying to get them to use their pieces of software for specific components of the construction process. And sometimes they feel extremely overwhelmed, right? So I think what we try and do, and the way that I try to approach it, is that I'm not trying to change your process, right? I'm trying to give you a better tool to do that process that's going to alleviate a lot of the burdensome manual work that comes with that process. So yeah, it becomes a little bit of an efficiency play or a sale, but at the same time, when you really buy in, um, and when Touchplan is utilized at its best, it is that collaborative workflow, right? So getting people invested in the whole project, going down to all of your subs and saying, this is how we're going to do things. This is the right way to go about it. It's going to make the project better. It's going to help us be on time. It's going to help us know when deliveries are being scheduled. It's going to help us know who's doing what and when. And if something goes wrong, it's going to allow us to put in all those variance reasons and go back and say, you know, we can do this better next time, right? So it's that constant learning. I think that when you really get down to it, the brass tacks, the projects that deliver, the supers that deliver, the PMs that deliver, they're the guys that are constantly reviewing the decisions that have been made, how they go about things, who's done what. And I mean, that's a process that they were always doing. We're just giving them a tool that allows them to plan the way that they want to plan or have been planning, but then downstream, right, allows for that data capture and provides them with all these analytics and insights and actions and things so that those learning mechanisms are right there in front of them on a daily basis.
It certainly sounds like there's lots of great benefits to using a software in terms of the collaborative nature of it, helping people to visualize and see what's going to understand, as say where an error might have been made and therefore how to avoid it in the future. So all key tenets of creating a continuous improvement flow. I am curious in relation to when you have such an effective tool, and obviously, I guess moving an industry into the 21st century with its the way it thinks and operates and its efficiencies and so forth, that obviously when you make any change, when you introduce anything new, there's always some resistance to these ideas. And invariably, there will be people working in constructions who may be holding some false beliefs or having concerns about the impact of adopting this and wanting to stay with what they know, the way they do it. So, what sort of resistance do you see, or what sort of reasons or excuses do people give for why they're going to try and stay with what they do, even though it's probably clearly less efficient than it would be if you were using a platform like Touchplan?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of there's a lot of resistance, right? And I go back to, construction has been the second biggest laggard of technology, and it's partly because it wasn't ever really used. I mean, you want to look at the people that are running projects now and the demographic shifts in the industry. There's a little bit of an old guard that has been very successful, and is very set in their ways and their means. And to those people, I would say, I'm not trying to change your process, right? I'm really not. What I'm trying to do is get you out of Excel. I'm trying to get you out of paper, so that both you, for your project, but also your company, right, is getting the benefit of everything that has happened on every task on a day-to-day basis, right? So it's not just the PM that's learning, it's the corporation that's learning. and is able to use data. I mean, as we move into a more data enabled world, I think it's really important that that those metrics are being captured across a portfolio of projects, but also on a single project. I mean, we do a lot of single project sales. What I would say is too, you don't have to necessarily be the guy up there doing or using the technology, right? The technology enables your process. So, on a lot of these large projects, complex projects, right? You can have, they have data analysts, they have people on the projects dedicated to doing these sorts of things. So why not use a system that is going to provide you with all these benefits? And, I think there's also a history of prove it, right? Where, look, there's always going to be guys that are resistant to change. Try it, right? Try it on a non-complex project, or, run our process alongside your process, which we do all the time, right? Is you can continue to put those sticky notes on the board. You can continue to huddle and have accountability. Do them side by side. And at the end of the day, right, I will say probably 99 out of 100 times, they end up seeing the benefit of the software. And then they become a believer, right? So it's tough to change people. I'm not trying to change people. I'm just trying to give them a tool.
Yeah, well, it strikes me, Brett, that obviously, it's a significant competitive advantage to when you do adopt a software platform like Touchplan. We've seen it obviously through Orbiz. Orbiz and Touchplan have partnered on several projects together. So perhaps if you could share any insights about the sorts of things that clients have reported or seen on projects like that, or other projects that you've worked on.
Yeah, no, I would even just go to a couple of real projects that we've worked on with Orbiz, right? And I think when you look at delivery without a project or a platform like Touchplan versus delivery with a piece of software like Touchplan, there's a ton of instances where we had it was really interesting. I was at a conference at the end of last year, and an advocate for planning software was talking about how they're building two biopharma facilities facing each other, right? The exact same platform, they're all the same, they're just inverted, right? So facing each other. And one of the PMs was running CPM, not using planning. The other was using lean process, using planning software. And the building that was using lean and planning software was finished 4.5 months ahead of the CPM based one from a methodology perspective. And he said, your planning software was one of the critical components that allowed us to deliver this and got everyone up to speed on lean processes and delivering on the lean methodology because of the collaborative nature of it. So, that's just one instance, right? But even in the level cross and the rail projects, the amount of complexity and disruption from something like removing level crossings in rail, right? Those projects need to be planned down to the nth degree to create as minimal disruption to the roadways and people as possible. And I think, your team has probably seen it in action even more so than I have. But the projects where Touchplan wasn't used, every project is going to run into its issues and its problems at some point in time, right? But your ability to identify, diagnose, pivot with Touchplan and get back on track sooner rather than later, because you have this history, because you have this schedule, because everyone's bought in. You know, those are the instances where we get calls and guys are just like, man, we had a weather delay for 2 weeks. We went down and we made it up because everything was already scheduled in Touchplan and planned, right? Everyone knew what we had to do, what we had to reconfigure, where they needed to be, where the materials were. So, you know, you hear those stories and it's really validating. Actually, one of the things I would say in terms of one of the best validations for me, quite honestly, it makes our job harder from a sales perspective, but is that like very on in the earlier days of Touchplan, a lot of the project managers that were using Touchplan, and they're competitive, right? Because they want the next big project. They don't necessarily want people under knowing how they delivered their projects on time, on budget, or so far ahead of schedule. They wouldn't even tell their colleagues about that they were using Touchplan. They wanted to keep it for themselves because it was like their secret weapon, right? So, you know, that's the sort of validation that when people really truly understand the capacity of a platform like Touchplan and what it can do for them and for their teams, I mean, that's the best sales pitch I could possibly make.
Well, you touched on it a little bit earlier. I did have the good fortune to interview Glenn Ballard, who is the co-creator of the Last Planner system. For people who aren't familiar with Last Planner, how does that integrate in with Touchplan?
I mean, the principles associated with the Last Planner system are kind of even at the bedrock of, I think, what makes Touchplan so successful. You know, I mean, we've got a patented pull planning line or process that is really one of the things that's at the heart of the Last Planner system, right? So our teams, and we even help coach this because of the way that Touchplan is built in terms of pull planner, going through a pull planning session to make sure that, you know, your people, your schedule, your materials, and everything are going to be where they need to be in an on-time nature, right? So that's actually one of the biggest features of Touchplan, and people that are, you know, what I would call lean evangelists and really believe in the Last Planner system. So it's set up very nicely for that. But also, you know, weekly work planning, your daily huddles, your commitments, you know, all of the core principles of, I mean, the premise for one of this call, you know, our call is optimizing, you know, operational improvements, right? And that's, you know, I think those are kind of five of the biggest principles of the Last Planner system, and they're all deeply embedded into Touchplan in terms of, you know, Touchplan is the first thing you open when you come in the morning to do your daily huddle, right? It's the last thing you do when you leave the job site in the week is make all your commitments and your look ahead plans and your weekly work plan for the following week. But I would say that, you know, one of the biggest things, and the thing that we've really been touting recently, is the collaborative nature of it, right? So it's not just one person putting a plan together and sending it out to everyone else and saying, well, this is my plan, go and do it, right? I mean, the Last Planner system really is about getting buy-in from that last guy or that last delivery, and understanding where they're going to be, where they need to be, what they're going to do, when they're going to get it done. And I would say that the thing about Touchplan and the collaborative nature of planning that we enable is that every trade, every MEP, every sub, all of those people have a stake in what's getting done, right? They're making their commitments. They're putting their tickets up, you know, on the plan. You can see, you know, the workforce numbers, the personnel that need to be on site every day. We actually have a really interesting use case that has kind of exploded over the last 6 to 9 months, is that the trades are actually starting to use Touchplan to plan their work independent of the project that might be leveraging Touchplan, right? Because, you know, Touchplan is managing that work plan and workforce vertically for a single project, right? But the subs have to manage their workforce horizontally across a number of projects and where they have to be, or even where they need to be on site. You have different crews, and all that sort of stuff, right? So, they've started to utilize Touchplan to get their crews commits and manage their own business on a horizontal basis across a number of projects. So, when you talk about those sorts of things, but that the collaborative nature of that, is really, I think, partly what sets us apart. And we were one of the first people to really tout it and see it, that when you get that buy-in up front, regardless of whether or not or when you need to be on a job site, right? I mean, we're pouring concrete and the electrician's coming in every week, or logging into Touchplan and understanding what's happening, where things are on the project. So he's scheduling people out, and he can make his commitments and, commit his crews. It's really important. But that level of visibility, to have it at your fingertips, to have everyone in there, so that the conductor of the orchestra, so to speak, right, has real-time information of what's happening. And that's really important when, the complexity of these projects and these buildings and where we are, and the red tape and regulatory and all this other stuff associated with getting a project across the finish line, right, makes it easier to manage. And at the end of the day, that's what Touchplan is doing for them.
Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense that people's buy-in and interest in being involved in a project would go up because they feel that they're more connected to the project. They can see it, they can understand, and so it just makes logical sense that people would feel more connected to the project. Now, Brett, I'm conscious of your time. You've been really generous in sharing your insights. So just to wrap up, I guess any other final thoughts, people in construction or perhaps other industries that are thinking, yes, having this more collaborative approach to planning would be a worthwhile exercise. But any other thoughts before we let you go?
I think one of the things I'd end with is that, I mean, it's not just construction where a lot of these principles can apply, and what Touchplan is doing. I think the collaborative nature of doing things and the commitment. We even had an intern, right, at one of our general contractors, opened a project in Touchplan to plan their wedding, and use Touchplan to plan their wedding, right? So, when you think about those sorts of things, and what it can be used for, down from the smallest detail to the most complex, one of the most complex data centers that's being built in North America, a project that we're on, and everything that entails. But what I would say, in closing, is a few things, if I've got a couple minutes. And one is just the importance of data. And I think just even over the last 6 to 9 months, and the contracts, and the way people are looking at data and how they want to capture data and what they're using it for, is becoming increasingly important, especially in this world as AI is starting to take over and being built into some of these applications. But the ability for a software platform like Touchplan to capture that data and make it useful for you, make it active, and allow you to be proactive. I think, one of the other things too is just the demographic shifts that we're starting to see in the industry, right? Is that being able to take those learnings, or take how a project was planned successfully, as you start to lose some of that institutional knowledge and those more experienced project managers, that it's establishing a framework and a baseline for others as they're coming up through the ranks, as a learning tool, right? So I think there are a lot of applications for software in the construction industry. I do happen to think that Touchplan is the best planning solution that's out there in the market. And are starting to do some really exciting things with it, from, AI experimentation, and data and analysis and portfolio analytics, to, granular time planning, being able to plan down to the minute level on a lot of your projects. And that opens up a whole lot of use cases for people in adjacent markets, industries, trades. So there's a lot to be excited about in the construction industry. And we're not trying to add costs to your project. At the end of the day, we're trying to help you do your job. And that's really what it comes down to.
I know certainly from speaking to the Orbis team, our performance specialists that work with the client, supporting them with their lean thinking and implementing these strategies, that the use of the Touchplan software platform has been tremendously beneficial to them and helped them move their projects forward with much greater speed and accuracy and achieve much better outcomes. So we certainly at Orbis are big fans of Touchplan. It was one of the reasons we wanted to get on and have a chat to you, because we think more people need to know about the work you're doing, because it's so beneficial to organisations. We'll make sure that at the end of this that we leave some details. So for people interested in finding out more about Touchplan, maybe taking a trial, maybe just, as you said, just testing it out and experiencing it a little bit, that they have the opportunity to do that. So Brett, just want to say thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, so we appreciate you taking some time out to just share a little bit of your wisdom and insights about Touchplan and about how the construction industry and others could benefit so much from thinking about employing the platform.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for having me, and obviously providing me with the opportunity to talk about both the industry, but also Touchplan as well. We're big fans of Orbis. We love working with you guys and the types of projects that you guys work on, and the value that you deliver to those projects. So thank you for that. Thank you for the partnership. Thank you for having me. Look forward to the next time.
Good on you, mate. Take care.
Thank you.